A shy black intern signed hello to a deaf guest, unaware the CEO was quietly watching behind. It begins on a morning that felt too bright for the heaviness in Maya Williams' chest. The lobby of GRRI Communications shone like a lake of glass, with tall windows that pulled in the Chicago sky and marble floors that made every step sound important. But Maya did not feel important. She was a quiet intern in PR, a shy black woman in a borrowed blouse and shoes that pinched. She carried a slim notebook and a pen that had run out of ink 2 weeks ago, but she kept it anyway because it had been her mother's. Her hair was a little frizzy in the light, and she kept pressing it down as if she could press down her nerves too. She stood at the edge of the front desk because she always stood at edges. She liked to help without being seen. She liked to notice what other people missed. That was why, before anyone else understood what was happening, Maya saw the tall man in a gray suit at the corner of the lobby and felt the old warm ache in her hands, the ache of words you do not say with your mouth. "Excuse me, sir. May I help you?" she said softly. Her voice barely made a ripple in the large room. But her hands woke up. Her fingers shaped the careful, respectful signs that had once been her second language. The language she had learned for love, for her younger brother Jesse. "Hello. Are you okay? Can I help?" The man turned. He wore a strong, fine suit and the tired look of someone who had traveled far. His eyes had been careful and guarded a moment before. Now they softened. He answered her with the same language, his hands steady and clear. "Thank you. I'm looking for someone." He was Terrence Clark, the founder of Q-Touch Technologies, a leader in tools that help people who cannot hear speak to the world with their hands and their eyes and their phones. He was well known to the right people, but the front desk staff did not recognize him because he had arrived very early and without noise. He had come 5 hours before the official tour because he liked to see how a place moved when it did not know it was being watched. He liked to feel the truth of a lobby when the shine was not ready yet. No one noticed him. No one knew how to speak to him. No one but Maya. She was shaking. She could feel it in her wrists and her shoulders. The old tremble that came when the past touched the present like a match to paper. She signed with care and spoke quietly for anyone nearby who might need to hear. "I think you're looking for Ms. Lauren Jacobs," she said and signed. "Do you want me to find her for you?" He nodded, relief softening the line of his mouth. In that moment, Maya felt something small and good lift its head inside her, like a bird that had been silent for so long it forgot its own song. But before she could take a step, the sharp click of high heels cut through the soft morning sounds. The sound hit like a warning, like the first drop before a storm. Maya's supervisor, Elodie Hart from PR, came across the marble floor with a smile that showed all her teeth and none of her kindness. She moved like the building belonged to her because in her mind it did. She looked at Maya the way people look at a stain on white fabric. "Miss Intern over here thinks she's part of the executive team now," Elodie said, voice light and mean at the same time. She did not look at Terrence. She looked through him, past him, as if he were a story on a far screen. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" she asked, still smiling, but her eyes were sharp. Maya felt heat rise up her neck to her cheeks. She tried to explain. "I was just—" He seemed lost and no one else. "So you took it upon yourself to engage a guest without clearance," Elodie snapped. "You're a PR intern, Maya, not a receptionist. Not a translator. Certainly not a member of the executive team." The lobby stilled. Phones stopped ringing. Shoes stopped moving. Heads turned. 2 coworkers slowed down to listen. One gave Maya a look of pity. The other looked away, like compassion might cost too much. Maya's hands dropped to her sides. She looked at the floor as if the marble could swallow her and save her from the hum of shame across her skin. Elodie leaned closer and lowered her voice, but not enough to hide. "Sweetheart, you always mean well, don't you?" she said syrupy. "But good intentions don't excuse stepping out of your lane. That's called violating protocol. You don't want to be that kind of intern, do you?" She giggled a little, turned her head and called to the 2 passing staffers. "Hey guys, check this out. Maya here just got herself promoted. CEO of Front Desk Affairs." There were weak laughs because weak laughs often come when people are afraid to do the right thing. One of the staffers looked down at her shoes. The other swallowed and kept walking. Maya tried to breathe small so no one would notice her shaking. Terrence Clark did not say anything because he did not need words to understand. He watched faces and shoulders and eyes. He saw the cruelty. He saw the way Maya folded herself to fit inside it. He watched the way her courage tried to stand even while her body stayed still. He lifted his hand and signed one slow thing so only she could see. "Stay with me." She blinked and swallowed. He tapped on his tablet and wrote a short message with steady fingers, then handed it to her. "I want you to be my interpreter today. You, no one else." Her breath caught in her throat. The words blurred, but she read them twice and they did not change. She felt her brother's small hand in hers from years ago, tugging, signing. "Tell her I said thank you." She remembered the day the world stopped listening to Jesse forever. She remembered the accident, the quiet after. She had not signed with anyone since then. Not with this much heart. Not with this much hope. Before she could give the tablet back, a new voice came from above, strong and calm like dark steel under soft cloth. "You heard the man." Everyone turned. The CEO, Ethan Graham, stood halfway down the glass staircase that looked over the lobby. The air in the room shifted, as if even the lights were paying attention. He came down the steps with measured grace, not hurrying, not threatening, just bringing the truth with him like a shadow. "I happened to be observing from upstairs," he said, his eyes never leaving Elodie. Mr. Clark arrived earlier than scheduled. While others hesitated, Maya took initiative, with respect, skill, and more professionalism than I have seen from some full-time staff this quarter. He stopped at the last step and let the silence sit. "Elodie, I'm sure your comments came from a place of stress," he added, voice even as a line drawn by a ruler. "But if I ever hear you speak to an intern or any employee that way again, stress won't be the excuse. It will be the reason you are out." The quiet became a held breath. Elodie's face went pale, then red, then pale again. Her mouth moved, but no words came. She looked at the floor. She looked at the ceiling. She did not look at Maya. Ethan turned to Maya, and something softened in his eyes. "Please assist Mr. Clark," he said gently. "Stay with him." Maya nodded because her voice might break if she tried to use it. She signed to Terrence, "I'm with you." He nodded back. And just like that, they walked together down the hallway toward the executive wing. Maya walked a half step behind because that felt proper, but her back was straighter now. Her chest felt sore, not with shame this time, but with something bright that hurt in a good way, like a new muscle being used for the first time in a long time. The hall smelled like clean air and electronics. The elevators opened and closed with soft sighs. The lights were white and even, with no hum. She saw her reflection in the shining steel, the loose blouse, the careful hair, the eyes still a little puffy from holding in tears that never fell. She looked like a person trying hard. She looked like a person learning to take up the space she had earned. They entered the first meeting, a glass-walled room where two junior developers stood with too many slides and nervous hands. Maya introduced Mr. Clark with a clear-signed greeting, then spoke gently so the room could follow. He typed notes, and she gave his thoughts a voice with her mouth and with her hands at the same time. He pointed out where the demo video had no captions, where the color contrast would be too weak for some eyes, where haptics could help people feel what others hear. He was kind and direct, and he smiled when she kept pace with him like they had rehearsed together. They had not. They were just two people who understood that language is more than sound. After the meeting, he typed one line and showed it to her. "You've done this before." She signed back, "My little brother." He was deaf. He looked at her for a moment and nodded, a simple nod that said a lot of things. Respect, sorrow, shared understanding, thank you. Behind a one-way mirror, Ethan watched. The company had observation glass for research and security. Today, he used it to see what people did when they forgot to perform. He did not watch Terrence as closely as he watched Maya, not because Terrence was unimportant, but because it was Maya who had surprised him. He replayed the lobby in his head. He replayed the sound of her small voice and the big meaning of her hands. He had cleared his schedule for the day not to manage a crisis, but to follow a truth. Some people shone best under a light they did not expect. He saw quiet strength in Maya, the kind you do not teach with training slides. He liked how she stood up for a guest with calm and then stood up for herself without sharpness. He pressed his earpiece. "Get me Lauren Jacobs," he said. "Yes, sir," came the reply. The next meeting was bigger. Senior VPs came in wearing suits that fit and smiles that did not. They were polite in that careful way people are when they are afraid of being found out. Maya felt their eyes slide over her like she was a chair someone had moved into the room by accident. She felt old heat creep up her neck again, but she kept her hands steady. When one VP interrupted mid-translation, Maya said in a soft, firm tone, "Excuse me, Mr. Clark wasn't finished." The room blinked. The VP sat back with tight lips. Terrence smiled behind his tablet and typed, "You've got more steel than you let on." She smiled a tiny smile back and did not cry, even though her chest was a wave of feeling. Not here, not in front of them. At break, Maya stood by the window and watched the lake. The city moved below, people like tiny arrows going somewhere fast. The sky turned a soft gray that promised rain and then changed its mind. She held her badge in one hand, the shiny plastic warm from her skin. She blinked hard and breathed slow so the knot in her throat could loosen. She thought of Jesse's fingers spelling out silly jokes. She thought of the hospital room and the way silence can be loud when it is full of grief. She thought of the lobby and that old shame rolling over her like a wave. She thought of the CEO's voice and the way it cut the wave in two. Ethan walked toward her without his usual crowd. He stood beside her for a moment and looked out at the same lake as if the water could help him find the right words. "I didn't want to interrupt earlier," he said. "You had a good flow," she nodded. "Thank you. I wasn't sure I was doing it right." "You were," he said. "You were better than right. You were needed." She looked down because eye contact sometimes feels like standing on a cliff. "How are you holding up?" he asked. She thought about lying. She decided not to. "I'm okay," she said, trying not to think about the lobby. "You don't have to," he answered. "That wasn't your failure. That was someone else's choice." She looked at him then. "Is she handled?" "For now," he said, "but I didn't come to talk about her." He took a folded note from his inside pocket and gave it to her. It was handwritten. She opened it with careful fingers. Effective immediately, Maya Williams is reassigned as Accessibility Liaison for Mr. Terrence Clark's visit and future diversity-centered partnerships. Please coordinate accordingly. She looked at the words until they settled into meaning. "This isn't charity," he added softly. "It's recognition." She nodded and folded the note like it was thin glass. "I understand," she said. He left before she could thank him, and she stood there feeling something shift. Not because someone had given her a line on paper, but because she had walked through the worst part of the morning and found out she did not break. An hour later, in a small break room with bad coffee and a narrow window, Maya sat alone. She touched her updated badge 3 times, not to see if the words were still there, but to remind herself that she was still here. The sky outside held the same promise of rain. The city held the same held breath. The door opened. Elodie came in, her lips tight. She closed the door with a gentle click and leaned against it like she needed it to hold her up. "So," Elodie said without looking at Maya's face, "congratulations." The word sounded like a bite. Maya sat still and tried to be ready for whatever would come. She did not want to fight, but she would not fold into a corner again. "You embarrassed me," Elodie said, her voice flat. "You made me look bad in front of him." "I didn't make you say those things," Maya answered softly. It was the truth, clean and small. Elodie's eyes finally met hers, and for a second there was something like shame there. Then it went away. "Some of us had to work very hard to get here," Elodie said as if Maya had not. "Some of us do not have the luxury of making mistakes in public." Maya blinked. "Some of us never get the luxury of being seen," she said, not angry, just tired. Elodie's jaw moved. "Watch yourself," she said. "You have a nice little moment going, but moments end." She pushed off the door and left. The air felt colder. Maya held her badge again. She did not cry. She put the mug in the sink and washed it. Small things can be a kind of control when big things are wild. She took a breath and went back to work. In the final meeting of the afternoon, a crisis walked in wearing a blazer and carrying a laptop. The engineering team had a live demo for Terrence, a prototype that would show how GRRI's new app could connect to Q-Touch devices for faster sign-to-text and text-to-sign. The room was full. Lauren Jacobs was there. So were the senior VPs, a legal advisor, 2 finance people, and a design lead who kept tapping his pen. Everyone wanted this to go well. It did not. The demo froze on the 3rd screen. The haptic feedback misfired. The captions lagged by 3 seconds, which felt like an hour when you were trying to talk. Terrence's face stayed calm, but his eyes sharpened. He typed slow, "This isn't ready." A vice president cleared his throat and said, "We'll have it polished in the next sprint." Terrence typed again, "Not polished. Rethought." Lauren looked at the ceiling and then at Ethan, who had joined quietly at the back. The room smelled like fear, the kind of fear that makes people talk too much or not at all. Maya stood beside Terrence and signed his typed thoughts with care, even though her heart beat fast. She watched the engineers' faces. She saw panic on one, shame on another, stubborn pride on a third. She raised her hand a little, like asking the class for a turn to speak. "May I ask a question?" she said softly. Heads turned, some with surprise, some with annoyance. She looked at the lead engineer. "When you tested this, did you test it with a deaf user in the room?" Silence. The engineer looked at his shoes. "We used a simulator," he said. Maya nodded, as if that answer made sense in a world where it should not. She signed to Terrence what the engineer said. Terrence typed a line and slid the tablet to her with a small sigh. "Build with us, not at us." She gave his words to the room in voice and hands, and they landed heavier than a scolding. Ethan stepped forward, hands in his pockets, his gaze steady. "Thank you, Mr. Clark," he said. "We hear you." He looked at his team one by one, and then at Maya. "Let's fix this. Today." The lead engineer opened his mouth to say there was no time. Ethan lifted a finger, just one, and the excuse melted. "Start with the captions," Maya said, the smallest person in the room, pointing at the biggest problem. "Make the text high contrast and delay less than half a second. Colors should meet accessibility standards. Add haptic cues for important words, and a dark mode for low light." The design lead, who had been tapping his pen like a nervous woodpecker, stopped tapping and started nodding. "We can do that," he said. "We can do that today." Lauren said, "If we do that today, what if it breaks something else?" "Then we fix that too," Ethan said. His voice was calm, but it woke up courage like a bell wakes up a sleeping town. People moved. Laptops opened. Chairs scraped. The room became a workshop. For 2 hours, they worked. Maya stood by Terrence, translating, advising, and testing. She found small things that mattered. Buttons too small for some hands, icons without labels, a help screen that assumed a user could hear alarms. She offered ideas. Not demands. Not showy. Just small, good fixes that came from years of watching Jesse fight with little things the world forgot. The engineers listened. In listening, they became better. The demo began to breathe. Captions appeared faster. Colors sharpened. Haptics buzzed at the right moments like a gentle tap on a shoulder. A smile flickered at the edge of Terrence's mouth. He typed one line and held it for her. Better. At the edge of the room, Elodie watched from the back, arms crossed, eyes tight. She had not been invited to this part, but she came anyway and stood quiet because she was learning what quiet could save. She watched the team listen to Maya. She watched the CEO repeat Maya's suggestions as action items. She tasted a kind of fear she had not tasted before, the fear of being the person who did not see. It hurt, but it could heal if she let it. When they ran the final demo, the room fell into the kind of silence people make when they want something to work so badly they hold their breath to help it along. It worked. The screen moved smoothly from sign to text and back. The captions landed almost at the same time as the hands. The haptics buzzed when a name appeared or when a question was asked. Terrence typed a question into the new interface. How would a parent use this to speak to their child at night with the lights off? The app dimmed. The text enlarged. The haptics tapped out a soft pattern you could feel without sound. Maya closed her eyes and thought of Jesse. She thought of how he would have grinned and said, "Do it again." When she opened her eyes, she realized tears were running down her face. She did not wipe them. Some tears are not a weakness. They are proof. There was applause, gentle at first, and then real. Ethan did not clap. He looked at the faces. He looked at the work. He looked at Maya. "We'll build a proper accessibility council," he said, voice firm. "Users at the table early, not just at the end. Maya, I want you in that group." Heads turned. Maya blinked. "Me?" "Yes," he said. "You." Terrence typed fast with a rare excitement in his shoulders, then gave her the tablet. "And I want you to consult for Q-Touch on a pilot. Paid. Not an internship." The room went quiet again. The kind of quiet that holds a new road like a newborn in both hands. Maya could not speak. She signed "thank you" so big and grateful that her whole upper body said it with her. The day should have ended there, with a nice bow and a happy sigh. But stories do not stop when we want. They stop when the heart is done beating fast. That night, as most people left, a storm finally came. Rain hammered the tall windows and thunder rolled like furniture dragged across the sky. A skeleton crew stayed to prepare for the next day's press briefing with Terrence. Maya was one of them. She stayed because she had learned to stay in storms. The conference room lights threw soft circles on the table. Coffee steamed. Paper rustled. Someone laughed in the hallway. And then a sound like a crack. A small lightning pop inside the building's own body. The screens went dark. The emergency lights kicked in, soft and yellow, the kind that make everything look like an old photograph. The building's alert chirped once and then fell silent with a whimper. "Power fluctuation," said the facilities tech. "We're fine." They were fine for 2 minutes. Then the alarms woke up for real, flashing red messages across dark screens. Security, lockdown, North Lobby access breach. The room stretched tight. People looked at each other with faces that asked, "Do we run? Do we hide?" Lauren grabbed her phone. No signal. The storm had made the building a metal cave. Maya's heart sped, but her head cleared in a strange calm that comes to people who have had to be brave before. She moved to the hallway and signed to Terrence, who had joined them for a last-minute review. "Stay with me." He nodded, and she realized she had chosen the same words he had given her that morning. It felt right. The facilities tech said the North Lobby entrance had tripped. Maybe wind. Maybe a door seal. Maybe something else. Protocol said they should gather in the safe room 2 doors down. They went. The safe room had no windows and too much air. It had a heavy table and a wall of quiet screens that now showed nothing. Ethan arrived, wet from the rain, hair darkened at the edges. "Everyone okay?" he asked. Heads nodded. He counted faces and then counted again. "Where's Elodie?" he asked. Silence. "She left earlier," someone said. "No, she didn't," Maya said, a picture in her head of Elodie slipping toward the North Lobby with a phone in her fist, her face set in the stubborn line of someone who needed to fix a thing right now. She went to the PR desk to pull the morning press list. The alarm flashed again. Breach. North Lobby. Maya felt her stomach drop like an elevator. "I'll go," Ethan said, already turning. "No," Lauren said. "Protocol." "Protocol can move," Ethan said, voice the kind that does not ask permission. He looked at Maya. "Come with me?" It was not a command. It was a trust. She nodded before fear could talk her out of it. Terrence looked from one to the other, then touched his chest, then pointed to them. "Together?" he signed. He did not like to sit in rooms and wait for storms to stop. He liked to move toward the thunder so he could see it. They moved down the quiet hall with the emergency lights washing the walls in soft gold and red. They passed the glass lobby, now dark outside and reflective inside. Rain wrote quick slanted lines on the windows. The North Lobby door showed a red flash above it. The handle hung crooked, a twist at the bottom like someone had forced it. In the middle of the lobby, by the front desk, stood Elodie. She had her back to them. Her hands were up. Facing her, with shoulders tight and breath ragged, was a young man in a soaked hoodie, his face too thin and his eyes too loud. He held a small tire iron at his side, not raised, not aimed, just held like he did not know what else to do with his hands. He looked like a person made out of panic. "Please," Elodie was saying, trying to make her voice soft, trying to make words into a blanket. "We can help you. You can put that down." The young man shook his head fast. "I just need a place," he said. "Just for a minute. They were chasing me." His voice cracked on the last word. He was not a threat looking for victims. He was a boy looking for a corner to stop being hunted. But fear with a tool in its hand is still dangerous. Maya stepped out before she knew she had decided. She raised her hands. She made them slow and open. She did not sign. She just showed empty palms. "Hey," she said, voice like warm bread. "You're safe." The boy flinched because the word safe sometimes hurts when you have not felt it in a long time. He pulled the tire iron closer. Ethan stopped 2 paces behind Maya, his body a shield without moving like one. Terrence stood to the side, his eyes on the boy's face, reading a kind of pain that does not need sound to be seen. "They were chasing me," the boy said again, softer. "I didn't mean to break the door. It was open. I pushed and it—" He looked at the tool in his hand like it belonged to a different person. Rainwater ran down his sleeves and dripped onto the marble, tiny diamonds breaking and sliding into nothing. "What's your name?" Maya asked. He hesitated. He looked at the door, at the floor, at the big window that now looked like a black lake. "Darius," he whispered. "Hi, Darius," Maya said. "I'm Maya, this is Ethan and Terrence. We want to help." She took one small step closer and stopped when his shoulders rose. "No police," he said quickly. His voice shook. "Please, I didn't do anything. I swear, I just need to breathe." Maya nodded. "Okay," she said. "Okay." She looked at his hand on the tool. She did not say, "Put it down." She said, "Does your hand hurt?" He blinked, confused. "What?" "Your hand," she repeated, softer. "That tool is heavy. Your fingers must be tired. My hands hurt when I hold heavy things too long." It was a silly sentence. It was also true. Her hands had hurt all day, holding language and fear and hope. Darius looked down at his grip as if feeling it for the first time. His jaw loosened by a small degree. "Yeah," he said. "Kinda. Would it help to rest them?" Maya asked. She held her own hands up higher so he could see both were empty. She took another small step. "Can I show you a thing?" He watched her, torn between fight and fall. She slowly, carefully signed a simple pattern. Breathe in, breathe out, soothing and slow, the way she used to do for Jessie when thunder made the windows shake. Darius did not know ASL, not really, but it did not matter. You do not always need to know a language to feel what it is trying to say. His shoulders lowered a little. The tire iron dipped. A single tear escaped his left eye and made a tiny, clean line through the dirt on his cheek. "I didn't want to scare nobody," he said. I can't go back out there." "You don't have to right now," Maya said. "You can set that down. We'll sit. We'll breathe. We'll figure it out." She glanced at Ethan with a quick flick of her eyes. He nodded, the tiniest nod, and she knew she could keep going. Terrence stepped closer too, hands open, eyes steady, and signed one gentle thing. "Safe here." Darius watched those hands with the same lost focus of someone who wants to sleep for a week. "Okay," he whispered. He lowered the tire iron the last few inches. He set it on the floor and let go like it might jump back into his fist. It did not. He took 2 steps back and leaned against the desk. His legs looked like they might give out. Elodie, who had been holding her breath so long her lips had turned a little blue, exhaled a small sob and covered her mouth with her hand. Ethan moved to the intercom and turned off the alarms that were still flashing red in the edges of the room. "We're going to the safe room," he said quietly to the group. "Come with us." They walked slowly together like a small boat crossing rough water. In the safe room, Darius put his head on the table and cried without sound. Not because he was weak, but because his strength had been running on fumes for hours. They gave him water. They gave him time. They did not give him questions like arrows. When he could speak, he said he had been working late at a restaurant and had taken the wrong train in the storm. A group had followed him out, laughing, then not laughing, words turning sharp. He ran. He saw glass and light, and he pushed on a door that should have stayed shut. It broke. He said he was sorry. He said he would pay. He said his grandma would kill him if she knew. He said he had never wanted to scare anybody. He said, "Please, please." Ethan listened and then did something powerful and quiet. He believed him. He did not call the police. He called the night manager and asked for blankets, dry clothes from the company swag stash, and hot tea. He called building security and told them to fix the door and remove the breach notice from the log because the truth was a story, not a siren. He wrote a note for the morning. Review after-hours access for storms. Create a sheltered corner with a staffed intercom so people in trouble can ask for help without breaking a door. He added, hire Darius as a temp in facilities if he wants a short contract. He has good hands. He needs a chance. When he put the phone down, he saw Elodie watching him. She was very quiet. Her eyes were different, like a person looking in a mirror and seeing someone new. She walked over to Maya. "I'm sorry," she said. The words were small and real. "I was cruel. I was wrong. You were right to help. You were right about everything today." She looked like it hurt to say, and maybe that was good. Change often hurts in the right way. "I will do better," she added, more to herself than to anyone else. "I need to do better." Maya did not hand her a ribbon of instant forgiveness, because real forgiveness is a bridge you build from both sides. But she nodded and said, "Thank you for saying that." And she meant it. The storm passed in the night. Morning arrived after all storms do, even the long ones. The building shone again under a washed sky. The press briefing went on as planned, with some changes born from the night. They did not brag about the demo as if it had been perfect from the start. They told the truth, that they had been shown where they were weak, and then they chose to get stronger. They talked about building with users instead of at them. They talked about hiring a council that would have power, not a token seat. They introduced Darius, not as a headline but as a person who would help the company make smarter decisions about real safety at night. They called him a consultant, because that is what you call a person when you want others to listen. He stood on the edge of the stage wearing a dry hoodie with the company's logo and a shaky smile. He looked at Maya while cameras clicked and nodded. The nod said, "Thank you for choosing to see me." She nodded back. "Thank you for letting us." When it was over, people pressed close to shake hands and ask questions. Voices rose and fell like a tide around them. Maya stood a little behind the crowd, holding a paper cup of water and trying to find a place to put her feelings. Terrence came to her side and tapped the cup with his knuckle. She looked up. He signed, "You changed the day." She started to shake her head, but he lifted a hand. "Listen, you changed the day." Then he typed one more line, the one that would circle back later when she could not sleep and would finally breathe easy. "Stay with me." His words from the morning worked both ways. She smiled, and this time the tears did not come because sometimes joy is steady enough to hold without spilling. Ethan found them by the window where the lake looked like polished steel. "There's one more thing," he said. He was not good at speeches, but he was good at sentences that matter. "Maya, I want to convert your internship into a full-time role. Accessibility and community partnerships. You'll shape the council. You'll work with Q-Touch. You'll hire and manage others. You'll make sure we don't forget what we learned today." Maya could not find air for a moment. She had never seen herself as the person who receives a sentence like that. She had seen herself as the helper in the corner, the one who carried water and wrote notes and hoped not to be noticed for the wrong reasons. She had seen herself as the voice for someone else, not as a person with a mic of her own. "I don't know if I'm ready," she said. "You are," Ethan answered. "But we'll help you be more ready. We'll train you where you want training. We'll listen to you where you know things we don't. Deal?" She swallowed and nodded. Deal. That night she took the long way home. She stopped at a park Jessie used to love, where the swing squeaked and the old oak tree wore a tire swing with duct tape on one side. She sat on a bench and took out a small photo from her wallet. It was wrinkled from being held too often. Jessie was 6 in it, eyes big, smile bigger, holding up sticky fingers from a popsicle. She signed a few slow words to the wind. "I did it, little brother." I used our hands. A soft wind moved the leaves like fingers. She felt less alone. She felt seen by someone whose body was gone but whose love was not. She went home and slept hard for the first time in months. Time does not stop just because your life changes. It keeps moving and asks you to move with it. Weeks passed. The council formed, not as a show, but as a room that whispered truth and do better into every plan. People came from the community. They were paid for their time and listened to without being asked to beg. The app launched with features that made real lives easier. The press praised it, but the praise felt small compared to the message from a mom who wrote, "My son smiled when he felt the haptic tap that spelled his name in the dark. Thank you." That message pinned itself to Maya's heart and refused to fall. Elodie changed too, not overnight, not completely, but in the stubborn, real way people do when they finally see the cost of their own pride. She apologized again, with more understanding each time. She asked Maya for feedback and listened even when it burned. She stopped using jokes as knives. She learned that leadership is not a crown you wear. It is a door you hold open. One afternoon, she left a small box on Maya's desk with a sticky note. A better pen, because some tools should work when you need them. Inside was a good pen, heavy and smooth. Maya smiled and wrote her brother's name on a scrap of paper just to see his letters in ink. As for Ethan, he kept watching, not in a creepy way, but in the way a gardener watches for new growth. He picked fewer fights that did not matter and more fights that did. He spent less time on floors where everything gleamed and more time in rooms where people said what was wrong without fear. His company shifted by degrees, like a ship turning toward a better shore. It did not turn because of one big speech. It turned because one morning a shy intern raised her hands and said hello to a deaf guest who needed help, and a CEO chose to see the truth behind that simple kindness. 1 year later, on a calm morning that smelled like coffee and new paper, Maya stood on a small stage in a community center on the south side. There were folding chairs and children drawing on programs with crayons, and a banner that said Community Tech Day in letters that did not match but somehow looked perfect together. She wore a soft blue dress and comfortable shoes. She spoke into a microphone that did not squeal. "My name is Maya," she said, clear and simple. "Today we are not launching an app. We are starting a new habit. We build with you at the table." She looked at the front row where Terrence sat with a small group of deaf students, signing along with the interpreter. She looked at the back where Ethan stood by the door with a box of water bottles, because he had learned that sometimes leadership looks like carrying small things, so others can carry big ones. She looked at Darius, who now wore a facilities badge and kept a tiny notebook of his own ideas in his pocket. He gave her a thumbs up, and then blushed because he still was not used to being the person who gives the signal. When the event ended, a girl of about 10, with hair in 2 puffs and eyes big enough to hold stars, came up to Maya and signed, shy and careful, "You sign like my mom." Maya signed back, "Your mom must be very good." The girl grinned. "She is," she said out loud. "Thank you for making the phone buzz words for me." She pointed to the cute touch device on her wrist, then to the demo tablet. "It makes school less scary." Maya knelt to be at eye level. "You make school brave," she said. The girl beamed and ran back to her mom. Maya stood and wiped a tear because some tears are a blessing. In the quiet that follows good work, Maya went outside to feel the sun. The air wrapped around her with a soft warmth. She took out her badge, not to check the words, but to feel the weight. It felt right. She thought of the first morning, the marble floor, the sharp click of heels, the shame that had tried to shrink her. She thought of Jesse, of the way he used to sign bad puns with serious eyebrows and then burst out laughing at his own joke. She thought of Terrence's steady hands and Ethan's careful sentences and Elodie's halting apologies and Darius's trembling pleas in the night. She thought of all the hard small moments that had led to this wide one. She lifted her hands and signed into the open air 3 words that belonged to the day and to the year and to the person she had become. We are here." When she went back inside, a photographer asked for a group photo. Everyone gathered in front of the banner. Maya stood in the front row without moving to the edge. Terrence stood to her left and signed proud with a careful smile. Ethan stood to her right and said, soft enough so only she could hear, "You changed the day again." The camera clicked. The picture caught faces lifted toward a future they had chosen to build with both hands. In the photo, if you look later, you can see a small, almost hidden detail. Maya's fingers are not at her sides. They are slightly raised, mid-sign, as if the language that brought her here is still alive in her hands. Because it is, and so this story closes where it began, with a simple act that was not simple at all. A shy black intern saw a deaf guest and chose to greet him in the language of her heart. She did not know the CEO was watching from behind. She did not know that a day could turn on a wrist, a palm, a sign. She did not know that courage sometimes looks like helping a stranger while wearing a blouse that does not quite fit. She knows now, and if you ever forget how change begins, remember her hands rising in the bright lobby light, spelling out respect one shape at a time. This is the end of A Shy Black Intern Signed Hello to a Deaf Guest, unaware the CEO was quietly watching behind.